Hello. My client earlier this week, I took a sip of coffee in our session and she said, you are drinking a lot of beverages at the moment. I don't think she used the word beverages. And I went, what do you mean? She went, every time I scroll through Instagram, you're always drinking. And I was like, I know, it's because there's this 10-15 second delay on going live. What am I supposed to do while waiting for people to come? Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are on episode 7, I think, of the Non-Native Teacher Diaries. And just going to check my request to join. And my guest is prompt, so you don't have to listen to me tell you about the dream that I was going to tell you about in this bit where I thought I'd have to chat for a little bit. You'll have to just use your imagination. It was a bloody weird dream. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Fantastic. I can see you and hear you. This is wonderful. Just going to move my camera ever so slightly. Thank you for joining me. Before we begin, can I get the pronunciation of your name? Is it Ivana?
Ivana, but it's fine. Ivana is also fine.
How do you pronounce it?
Ivana.
Ivana. Stress on that first syllable. Ivana.
Great.
Ivana. Fantastic. Welcome to the show, Ivana. Welcome to your diary. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
We're going to jump into the topic of being a non-native teacher, of what that experience is like, of discrimination or distinctions that you may have faced. But before we do, could I ask you quickly to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Ivana and I'm from Belgrade, the capital of Serbia. I've been teaching English for 18 years now, and I was in the systems, the traditional system, the language schools, 2 international schools, and then 6 years ago I decided it was enough for me, or my body decided you cannot do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started my own small company, and I've never been happier. I work alone, and sometimes I collaborate with some teachers online, but I also have an office. I'm here right now. Some people still like to come and see you, face to face, even after Corona, so that's great. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Amazing. I just want to pick up on one thing. I love the idea that out of exhaustion, you leave teaching or not teaching, but teaching in language schools and then start your own business. How's the exhaustion level and burnout level of owning your own business? Have you swapped one stress with another, or are you feeling?
Yes, but I'm very comfortable with this stress because I actually love this, and many people told me then when I left, you're so brave for doing this. But really, I couldn't understand. I wasn't brave. It's just I couldn't do that anymore. When you hit a point, a rock bottom, you can only go up or somewhere else. So that's what happened, I think.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm asking all of my guests this before we begin. Just a question on the terminology. Is non-native teacher something that you use to describe yourself? Is it something that you are, I don't use it myself, but I'm happy for it to exist. Where do you stand on the kind of native, non-native terminology?
You made me wonder if I should have more of a problem with that, actually, because really, and also last year I came across some accounts that were really vocal about that and raising awareness, and really opened my eyes to this problem, because I told you here it's not such of an issue, it's not a big problem, I think. So I don't have a problem with that, I think, because I personally don't associate anything negative with this term. So this is my reality, so it's just a fact. But I guess if I'm being defined as not you, basically, and if that's causing me to be denied jobs and being discriminated against and basically being very unhappy, I can see it's a big issue. It's pervasive, especially after having listened to all of your guests. They all feel the same or similar.
Yeah. I think you've hit on that. I can't remember if it was maybe Zdenek or Beaster, one of my early guests. talked about exactly what you've said, which is that it's just a descriptor. Non-native itself doesn't mean anything bad. And if, as you've said, in your experience, that hasn't been a big problem for you, then why would it be a bad word? It's not the word or the fact, it's the discrimination and the discriminatory practices and the negative things that we attach to that.
So true. Mm-hmm.
So you said that a year or so ago you started coming across accounts that have kind of raised your awareness. Was that your first experience of like, oh, there's a distinction and I haven't thought about that before, or do you have other experiences as well?
I experienced that. I mean, I try to remember, you know, I was trying to think if I have those experiences or if I've had them. And when I had my first, let's say, serious job, my full-time job at the first international school, Serbian staff, they could only be teaching assistants, and teachers were only native. You could only be a teacher if you were a native speaker. Now, this is not a language school, it's an international school, so it's different. But you definitely got the sense of they're very, very special, you know, and, you know, their salary was 4 times more, and, you know, the school was sorting out their apartments, accommodation. They would go to great lengths to get them to come to Serbia. Sometimes they came to work in the summer later because they were abroad, you know, they were foreign. So I think that's when I first experienced that, and I've had some awkward, uncomfortable situations, but now I realize that it was happening. Back then, I kind of took it at face value. This is a normal thing, and they're just very, very special, you know.
Right. I mean, you said special there. Was that the story that was given? Like, if there was any discussion around this within the staff, and maybe there wasn't, was that the narrative? Like, these guys are just extra good, they're extra special, they deserve all of this extra money and attention?
I think it was the management, you know. You talked about schools. I mean, it's just the same as language schools. That's how they were selling the school, basically. If, you know, your children are being taught by native speakers, so somehow your child will sound like a native speaker or something like that. I mean, it's just the system, you know. I had great colleagues, and this is not, you know, anything negative about, you know, them. Is just you were in that system where you kind of felt, okay, I'm replaceable. That's how it felt. Mm-hmm. I think.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I guess I'm really interested in how conscious you all were of the distinctions.
Not at all. It was just like normal.
Yeah.
I hope that it's different now. I think I've heard that one of my ex-colleagues, a friend, that she's a teacher now. But okay, it's been 10 years, I think, so she must have proven herself, I guess, that she can do a good job.
Okay, so things are very slowly changing.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah. So then when did this go from being just an unconscious, I've been using the expression in other lives, like the water you swim in, you just, the way things are. When did it go from that to being something you were then aware of?
Well, like I told you, I came across those accounts and it really got me thinking. And also occasionally you do get a question, I get a question. Just recently, prospective students, so we were communicating via email, and they were interested in the lessons, the prices, courses, etc. And then I got this question, are you a native speaker? Or is the teacher a native speaker? But that was me. And so I had, you know, two sides of my brain. What am I supposed to do now, right? So I want to say, no, I'm not, and I'm Serbian, and just continue with the conversation. And I don't want to justify myself, because, you know, as soon as you start justifying yourself, as we know in life, it seems like you've done something wrong. There is some guilt somewhere, right? So I didn't want, for example, to say anything, but then this other side of my brain is like, okay, you're not going to punish this person for asking a question, because, you know, we've been talking about that, how bombarded we all are with these messages, right? And so I did write one sentence about, you know, my experience and my expertise, and then it's on them, you know, to decide what they want to do with that. And I feel like students have the right to choose. Of course, if they want a native speaker, it's fine. Even a native speaker without much experience, it's okay. But I feel maybe there's so many messages that this is the only way, that maybe they don't even know that there could be another way to achieve their goals and, you know, proficiency or whatever it is that they want. So that's what I did. I don't know if it was the best decision, but that's that side was stronger, you know.
I think you've hit on a really interesting tension, because especially when if it's coming from management, if it's coming from somewhere senior, right, there's a whole different power struggle there. You might not be in a position to say anything, but there is an expectation that no, you should know better. When it's coming from a student who's swimming in the same water you were swimming in, like they've just been surrounded by this message, it's not their fault if they think that that's something that they should be asking about, that they think that that's an important part of the conversation. The flip side, of course, is to what extent is it your responsibility as an individual teacher to have that educational conversation with them every time it happens, especially as you say, when like, and Zdenek pointed it out, you know, waking up and just checking a Facebook page and suddenly there's a native speakerism comment. It's like, already this is a bombardment. To what extent should I have to then fight the fight every day kindly and patiently and like, well, you think that's important, but actually like that's a huge amount of energy. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it sounds like you've sort of got that tension in your head. You said the two voices, and you kind of compromise by saying, I'll say one sentence and then.
I mean, I don't like it that I had to I mean, I didn't have to, but it's just something that I wanted to do. Like I said, it's really, really not their fault. But I guess, you know, you always have insecurities as a teacher already. So I guess these things are making it worse sometimes, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Can you speak a little bit more to that, the insecurities? I mean, I would interpret that as kind of the negative voice in your head. Is that negative voice in your head kind of repeating some of these, like, native speakers are special messages?
More before, I guess. I'm older now and I have my own business. I mean, they didn't go away. I don't want to say that. They're sometimes there, but I guess you just realize that, first of all, you're human, we're all humans, when it comes to mistakes, even with a language. And then you realize, oh, a native speaker can make a mistake also, and they sometimes do. And then you realize it's not really about that. It's just, you know, being human. And I really had a hard time with those things, you know, because I'm kind of anxious as a person. So sometimes I would get a panic attack. Oh, I don't know this. What is happening? Should I be a teacher? What am I doing here? You know? But then I realized, of course, that's the wrong way to think about it, because every time, for example, someone asks you something and you don't know, that is your one chance to realize what it is that you don't know. Otherwise, it would never come to you. And so I don't think students mind those kind of things ever, really. I have a student, Gabriele, for example, he's Italian, and he always talks about things that I pretty much don't know anything about. So I learned so much vocabulary. We found it together, you know, about electrical audits and cars and highways, and we laugh about it, you know, it's okay.
That's amazing. I think that's such a, I mean, you mentioned you're older, you own your own business. There's obviously been growth there, but I do think that prospect of having a student, perhaps, where they say, hey, I'm a mechanic, or I'm an engineer, or I'm a pilot, and you're like, oh shit, like I am not going to be able to be an expert on this. That's a really vulnerable position to put yourself in as a teacher, if the message in your mind is a teacher should have the answers.
Yes, yes. And those are the things that I don't know even in Serbian. And I had many of those situations. You know, I taught programmers, business English, accountants, and I had to learn so many new things, and I didn't know a lot of them, but I realized I couldn't possibly, you know, I'm yet to learn those things. It's okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I, as the native teacher in the conversation, don't know those things either. I have felt vulnerable and exposed in those situations with those clients, because I've wondered, I've had the thoughts in my head of like, what are they getting from me? Because 92% of the time, if they need a word, I'm checking the dictionary. So what are they getting from me that isn't Google? And then of course you get into the everything else that a teacher is,
Right.
rather than just
That's
a
the
walking
point.
dictionary.
Yes, yes. We're so hard on ourselves sometimes, and they're not so strict, our students. And then if they weren't getting anything or a lot from your lessons, they would go, right? They would leave, but they stay. So there must be a reason. And as a teacher, you should get to that reason. Why are my students still here? You know, what is my quality, my talent, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this leads me then to my next question, and it's a clumsy question. It's an imperfect phrasing, but I guess if you were to be speaking to, and I'm sure there are people on the call or watching the replay, if you're speaking to non-native teachers who perhaps are where you were a few years ago, where that voice is louder, you said it hasn't disappeared, but it's so much quieter than it was. Maybe they've still got that voice quite loudly. What would you say to them that they should be like more focused on than not being a native teacher?
Right. And I think it's important to realize, to acknowledge the little voice. If we're pretending it's not there, it's not such a good thing. But, you know, I would tell them to first not make the same mistake that they're telling their students not to make, which is compare themselves to anyone and native speakers, you know, because it's such a, I don't know, a useless endeavor, I guess. But, you know, getting to, you know, if you see that your students are successful and that they're achieving their goals and dreams, which happened, you know, to me so many times, even when I was doubting myself, there is the consequence. So there must be something upstream happening, which is really good. And so, you know, they should first realize, like I realized when I tried to teach Serbian a couple of times, that basically being a native speaker does not make you a teacher. that's the whole point. It's something else, right? And you know, find out what their you know, what their talent is. You know, some teachers are funny, some are fun. People say that I calm them down, that I have this soothing presence, but for some that would be the wrong thing. You know, if I get a really energetic student, I would bore them to death, right? And you're not everyone's teacher. We should remember that. It's painful, but it's so true for different reasons. Not just, you know, your vibe attracts your tribe, I guess. And so they can ask the students why they enjoy the lessons, but students will tell you. And I guess, you know, also if you know your shortcomings, that's okay. We should get to know where our weak spots are, just so that they don't lurk somewhere in the dark and make us feel anxious, and kind of make steps towards improving, I guess, whatever it is that we want to improve.
I agree with everything you've said. I completely second that, especially that idea of pulling those negative thoughts out of the dark and taking a good hard look at them. That's something I do a lot with my clients. Like, actually, let's work out, what are you scared of? What is the big voice in your head saying? Because we get very, very good at putting that voice in a box. And even though it's shouting and we hear it so clearly, we're not hearing it consciously a lot of the time.
Yes, and I guess the question that helped me, because at times I was really, really anxious, especially with, you know, programmers and accountants. I was really out of my depth at the beginning, you know, and I thought, okay, what is the worst thing that can happen? And I thought, okay, what if you embarrass yourself? You know, you don't know something, it's embarrassing for you. And then I thought, okay, you embarrass yourself. Okay, that's fine. And you move on with your life. Everything is forgotten, you know, after 5 minutes. So that's a good question to ask yourself.
Definitely, definitely. And again, it's sort of the same question I asked you last time. How aware have you been of this learning process? You've obviously grown. The voice is quieter. You can see changes in your confidence. How aware of you? How conscious was that process?
I don't think it was conscious at all. I mean, at one point, I guess it became more conscious when I started to really ask myself those questions. Okay, how can I make this better? You know, for example, not feel intimidated by a native speaker or not being one. So I guess just thinking about what is it that I can objectively do. I objectively cannot become a native speaker, but I can improve and be a better teacher in any way, you know.
Mm-hmm. So do you think then, based on your experience, and I'm aware you're one person with one experience, but do you think that it's sort of time and growth and experience and these things all help to building that confidence? Or do you think that there are, I guess I'm asking the question perhaps on behalf of teachers who are still feeling this thing after 25 years, still feeling that thing, well, I've got loads of experience and I've got, you know, loads of examples of students who've gone on to do well in exams or in life or whatever, and yet I'm still feeling it. That clearly hasn't been enough for them. So I'm wondering, is there, I don't know, do teachers need, is there a secret ingredient that's needed to kind of get you through to a happier place with this?
I guess it has to do with time, but just because it took me so much time, I guess 18 years or something like that, it doesn't mean that, you know, for someone else who becomes aware of this now, you know, I hope for them it's not going to take that much, because I guess for them, they could listen to these conversations and try and find, you know, where they can find their strength and quality, because I think it comes down to that, and it comes down to the students and how happy they are with you. Just look at them, you know, what it is, why are they with you still in those lessons? It helped me. I don't know if there could be a better way than that.
I think it's great. I think it's great. I mean, we talk a lot among like colleagues of mine who do similar mindset coaching, like rather than trying to delete the negative, trying to just like shut it up, because that doesn't tend to work in the long term, kind of counterbalance it with some positive. It's not that the positive kind of overrides it, but that you have a much more balanced perspective. No, I'm not a native speaker, and sometimes that makes me feel self-conscious. However, I also have XYZ strengths that I like know backwards and forwards. I feel really comfortable going into an environment with a new student because I know that I'm good at boom, 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 boom. I think that's a really great way of looking at it.
It is. It just it doesn't always help for people who live and work in an environment where this doesn't really matter, where they cannot get the job. So I guess here, because we don't have such major issues, I can say that, but I can see that there is, you know, sometimes when I was looking at some of the posts on those accounts, I could, you know, feel a lot of anger and frustration, and it bothered me sometimes. But then I realized, you know, that sometimes those feelings are the only healthy reaction to what is happening, you know, and anything other than that would be kind of an adaptation to something that is toxic, I guess. But even in those circumstances, I guess these things can help that we just talked about.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I think a distinction I like to draw is between the discrimination and agreeing with the discriminator. Like there's a difference between being in an unfair environment in which you are not paid the same and you do not have the job opportunities, and believing that that is right because native speakers are special, and there's being in that environment but actually going, no, this is wrong, I have strengths and I am proud of myself as a teacher. The kind of where that all crashes is that, yeah, you do get anger and you do get frustration, but I think, as you said, that's a perfectly natural response to the situation. You want to eventually move through that and kind of move on to a slightly different emotional state. But no, I think you're right to point out the fact that in your context, discrimination hasn't been so much of an issue. It's obviously come up in those international schools, but the place you're in now, that isn't a problem, and therefore you have the luxury, quote unquote, of worrying about the way you think about it. Where, of course, obviously, if you're in an environment in which it doesn't matter how much you love yourself, your employer still isn't giving you more money. That's a very different context.
Yes, yes. And I feel what you're doing now is actually doing right that. I think raising awareness, I think it's so important because it's not the same as you pointed out, to not be aware of your feelings and why they're happening, and being aware and kind of saying, okay, but I'm going to do this. And I think it's really helpful because I've listened to the diaries, and the stories are so similar, the feelings are so similar, and I think it's a good thing because at least you feel like, okay, I'm not the only one. I'm not an imposter, because all of these people are feeling the same way. We cannot all be imposters, right? So I think this is so, so helpful, you know, to teachers.
Thank you. Yeah, and I completely agree and hope that that is what people listening are getting from it. I'm looking at the time. I want to wrap this conversation up in a second, Ivana, but is there anything else that you haven't had a chance to share that you wanted to before we finish?
Yeah, I think I you know, gave some advice to new teachers. I hope that they will not have to go through everything that I've been through, and that the time before they realize they're valuable is really, really short, and that they're going to get a lot of students that just adore them, you know.
Absolutely. And a quick shout out then to you and your work. You're based in Belgrade, but you said you also do work online. Like, who are your students? If anyone listening to this is like, she seems nice.
They're mostly Serbian, but I also have students from other countries, and mostly online, but I also have people coming here. So I haven't really decided exactly if I want to, you know, focus on one thing. And I have everyone. I have adults and children. I know that I should have a niche. I don't have a niche yet, so maybe that's something for the future, you know?
Okay, so if anyone vibes with you, they can get in touch and see if you'd be a good fit for them.
Thank you.
Cool.
I really appreciate that.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you, Ivana, and thank you to everyone who has joined live or on the replay. We will be coming back on Monday to chat to Mary from the non-native teacher, non-native speaker. I do just need to like get her handle.
It's so long. We should get rid of it. That term is not working in any way.
I'm going to be on with her on Monday, and I'm sure she is going to have loads and loads to say because this is what she is about. So really looking forward to that conversation. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and thank you again, Ivana.
Thank you.
Bye.